All right, this is my audience.
Hi, hello.
They're so beautiful. Look at them.
Oh, he said, I hate you.
All right. Okay. My name is Alexia Wallace, and I will be telling you today why the United States should decriminalize sex work. Okay. So in the United States, besides a few counties in rural Nevada, sex work is illegal. The United States did have legal prostitution at varying points in history, including the infamous Storyville of New Orleans, where we basically had a red light district until the early 1920s. However, nowadays, most people see criminalizing sex work as a moral necessity. But on the contrary, criminalization of sex work endangers people, especially highly marginalized and vulnerable groups. Many studies have concluded that the criminalization of sex work increases violence against sex workers, and it even raises STD rates in the general population. I understand that to some, decriminalizing sex work may seem like a crazy thing to suggest. It's a sensitive topic, and it's not given much attention in mainstream media, at least not in the United States. However, organizations such as Amnesty International, the UN, and the Human Rights Watch all support decriminalization. New Zealand actually fully decriminalized sex work all the way back in 2003 and have seen incredibly positive results. Almost 90% of sex workers in New Zealand report that they feel safe at their jobs and that they feel that they are protected by the law. So if they're abused by a client or an employer, they have the right to sue or take legal action. So, the first thing to consider about decriminalizing sex work is the question of bodily autonomy and government power. Most people would agree that you should be allowed to do whatever you wish with your own body, provided it is consensual and does not harm others. If you think about it, it seems nonsensical that you can be arrested and incarcerated for consensual sex. Not to mention, being convicted of prostitution obviously makes it much harder for you to get a regular job after you've been convicted of that. So it doesn't really protect or help women that are convicted of prostitution. And regardless of philosophical and moral questions about bodily autonomy, legislation should be based in fact. It is claimed that criminalization protects women. However, both experts and sex workers alike say that criminalization endangers them. Because sex work is illegal, sex workers are afraid to report when they are assaulted or abused. They're also more likely to be exploited by pimps because they know that these people are vulnerable and they are looking to make money through sex work, and they have no way to report that they're being abused by pimps. There's also a lot of evidence that suggests that sex workers are less likely to use protection if prostitution is criminalized. Because the clients have more power to manipulate them and coerce them into acts that they are not comfortable with. And in some cases, carrying around condoms can even be used as evidence in court against women who are arrested for prostitution. Several studies have found direct links between decriminalization and reducing HIV rates. It's estimated to reduce new infections of HIV as much as 30%. However, recent bills passed in the US have made sex work even more dangerous. Because of bills such as the Fight Online Sex Trafficking Act, which sounds really nice in theory because we all want to stop sex trafficking, but websites can now be held accountable for facilitating prostitution. These bills were opposed by many organizations, including many major anti-sex trafficking organizations. However, they still passed by a wide majority. These bills are pushing sex workers onto the streets and even pushing them to be more involved with pimps. Since the barrier of the internet isn't there anymore, they have to find other ways to advertise to clients, and they have to find other ways to feel like they have a sense of protection. A study in San Francisco estimated that prostitution-related crimes tripled after these bills passed. So it begs the question, why are we passing legislation that the experts and the facts disagree with? Also, another issue with criminalization is that police violence and profiling are very rampant. Not only are marginalized groups such as minorities and LGBT people more likely to be involved in sex work, they are more likely to be profiled and abused by police. This is obviously a recipe for disaster and human rights violations. Recently in Ohio, a suspected sex worker was shot to death by an undercover officer who claimed to be arresting her. However, she was uncuffed in the passenger seat in a random parking lot. So it seems pretty obvious that he was not trying to actually arrest her. In conclusion, I would like to say that I want to live in a country where the laws we pass are both logical and compassionate, and I'm sure that you do too. Just because something is shocking or uncomfortable or personally disagreeable to us does not mean that we should abandon our most vulnerable people. We have to listen to the facts, the experts, and most importantly, sex workers themselves. In order to progress, we should all acknowledge our responsibility to educate ourselves on sensitive topics. And here I have an infographic titled Facts About Sex Workers and the Myths That Help Spread HIV. It details how criminalization increases HIV risk and gives very exact statistics. And I included this in my preparation outline for you guys to look at. Woo! Thank you.
Yeah.
Yay!
Woo!